Hello, mushroom traders and investors checking in on the sector. We've had some bullish news since we last checked in, just in the sense that the Senate is now favoring the Democrats, which means a much more favorable political environment for both marijuana and the mushroom space, medicinal mushrooms. So that's going to get interesting as we watch things to develop and watching the correlation between those two sectors as well. And let's check out where the charts stand. So before we get into the chart, something to highlight: the financial services company Horizons ETF Management filed documents to have a psychedelics ETF expected to go live January 15th, which means end of this coming week, this coming Friday perhaps. Something to keep an eye on. The ticker is going to be PSYK. And we have something to be going off of as far as looking for similarities. So MSOS is the first USMJ ETF that has broad exposure to a bunch of the US MSOs. And look how it started. It started very tiny volume, very slowly, and it's now hitting the real deal as far as volume and has done nothing but go up since then. So not to suggest that the psychedelics ETF is going to do nothing but go up, but watching for the potential of a slow start. The biggest difference between the two is that this is traded on the NYSE, and I believe that ETF is just going to be traded on the NEO and on the smaller exchanges, which again is not ideal because there are definitely lots of hedge funds and firms and institutions that essentially, if you're on the OTC, they're not going to put any money in it, and having higher listed ETFs would be ideal, but just something to be keeping an eye on. Obviously, if we see money going into the ETF then looks to buy the underlying holdings, and that looks to potentially make those underlying holdings go up. So that's what we're going to be watching in the short term. And again, as I mentioned, with the Senate now going towards the Democrats, we'll be watching for any potential shifts in the market environment as we look towards changing legal conditions. Because as we know, the most risk and reward in sectors, as the marijuana sector has shown us, is sectors that are illegal and moving towards legality. And that's obviously where the mushroom sector stands at this point. So we're going to be looking at a lot of names, and not a whole lot has changed in the last week. We've been fairly range bound from where we looked at it last week, and the premise remains the same. We're looking for weekly higher lows to be set. Once those weekly higher lows are set, we're then going to be looking for weekly lower highs and likely tightening ranges. Now, to change that, increasing bull volume would be needed to just go straight to a higher high. So in the absence of notable increasing bull volume, we will look for tightening weekly ranges. So in the short term, we are watching for weekly higher lows to be established across the sector. And we're also going to be watching the correlation now with the marijuana stocks, because since the vote back last Tuesday, there's been some more notable correlation between the two, just as far as red days and green days. So we'll be keeping an eye on that, but weekly higher lows. So CMPS set a low, bounced, rejected from resistance, just a daily lower high, and this is now the most important range for us. We've been trading within it for the last 6 days. To change the daily trend and to set the weekly higher low, we have to hold 4273 and break 50, 4992, to confirm a daily trend change. The bears still have absolute control of this chart right now, unless the bulls can pull that off. I made an entry back on January 5th, just bottom fishing this low of 4273 because the risk was so small. We saw a significant move up, and I'm still pretty much slightly green in the position, but just going off of this support level. If that support level breaks, I will be back to all cash because clearly our weekly higher low will not be set at that point. And if we were to break that support and see no bear follow through, I may hop back in fairly quickly. But the last thing I want to do is be in a position and have it keep pulling back into the upper 30s. And next thing you know, you're significantly underwater. I always limit my risk when trying to make entries. MMEDF also looking for a weekly higher low to be established. It looks like it's forming. We've got a base at 263 as a double bottom. And it's important to be watching both the Canadian and the USMJ tickers, because in Canada we dropped to a lower low here, and in the US it's a double bottom where we held support. So a little notable difference between the two. We have a key resistance level of 330, and we broke it, but there's no follow through. So we got our low, high of the bounce, which was just a daily lower high, double bottom, break resistance, but you never want to break resistance straight into consolidation. So 263 remains the most important support level, and aggressive bulls are going to be going off of that level hard because, again, if that is our weekly high or low, and if the bulls can more convincingly break 330, we're looking for a move back up towards the $4 range. Again, I will anticipate a lower high as the most likely scenario if we don't have big-time bull volume, but there's significant percentage gains up towards that short-term target. So daily time frame, all about 263. Bulls are making any entries off of that level, and we need a break of 337 this coming week to get follow through of that daily trend change. If 337 does not break, it's a red flag for me. So I have a position right now. I started with an average of 315, and then I did play this oversold bounce. When we dropped down to that double bottom, the hourly RSI was oversold, and I ended up just flipping a position the same size of the position that I already had. I flipped it to drop my break even now from 315 into the upper 290s. So just making me a little bit more comfortable holding that position. And I may add one more off of this support. It depends on how the first couple days go this coming week, but just keeping risk fairly limited, knowing that that's the most important level. And again, the ideal scenario for the bulls is pull back, form a higher low compared to 263, and then break 337 to confirm and follow through with that daily trend change. NUMI already has a weekly higher low set. 102 is now the most important support level. If we were to break 102 from here at any point, it's going to confirm a weekly downtrend and give back the vast majority of that move and start looking more like a pump and dump. So that's why that 102 level is so important for the bulls to maintain. The daily chart did have a little mini trend change here. We hit a low of 102, we bounced, formed a lower high at 120, we came down and held 102 by 1 penny. There's that double bottom, and then convincingly broke that little 120 resistance on increasing bull volume, and it was more follow through than we saw on the MindMed chart, which is why we can say our weekly higher low is set on NUMI, but it's not quite convincingly set on MindMed. So on this little pullback to end last week, anything above 103 is just a daily higher low. And the goal for the bulls from here is just keep this daily uptrend going as long as possible as we make our way up, looking for a weekly lower high, anything under 245. And again, the size of these moves, once the weekly higher lows are set, dictate probabilities. If this bounce goes all the way up to $190, $2, we know that there's plenty of space for a weekly higher low to form next time we top out. If this bounce tops out soon, let's say we top out at 150, that keeps the door open for the possibility of confirming a weekly downtrend. So the amount of bounce follow through is important. RVV also trying to establish its weekly higher low. Base of support is at 55, but we have not convincingly changed the daily trend yet. We have our low, high of the bounce was 72, double bottom, didn't break 72, another lower high at 69, so this range is just tightening, and we're going to get a break of this range likely this coming week. The bulls must hold 55, and they must break 69 to confirm a daily trend change and confirm the weekly higher low has been established. So just like MindMed, it's a daily double bottom that is clearly the most important short-term support level, and the daily lower highs have to break to show us a shift in momentum. Trip, also looking for a weekly higher low. Not established just yet. 25 was our low. High of the bounce was 345. We double topped at 34. And essentially the bulls' ideal scenario is hold 285, break 345, and that would be the confirmed daily trend change, giving us the weekly higher low. MYCO, weekly EMA 12 support as a back test, trying to set the higher low at 38. Here's an example where we broke support. We initially had a low of 39, then we dropped down to 38 a couple times, but no real bear follow through. We have a resistance level at 475, and we topped out at 48. So essentially, double bottom at 38 and a double top at 48. And the bulls, if we pull back to start Monday, have to hold 38 and then break 48 to confirm the daily trend change and set the weekly higher low. Sector is certainly very correlated with all these individual names. SHRMF, looking for the weekly higher low off EMA 12 support. 59 cents is the low at this point, but we keep putting in the daily lower highs. So daily lower high at 106, 89, I'm just rounding a bit, 80, and now 73. Bulls have to hold 59 and break 73 to change the daily trend. If 59 breaks, the daily downtrend continues, and no weekly high or low will be set at this point. PSYC, weekly high or low of 24 cents. We can see we got pretty notable follow through off of that level. Not really a daily trend change, more of just sideways building a base of support into a bull break, but a lack of follow through at the moment. Bulls must hold 24 and break 325 to continue this bounce. So same area, same setup as last week. Looking for weekly higher lows, daily trend changes needed. Essentially this last week bounced off some support levels, but for the most part, just range bound sideways trading, and we have to see those ranges break bullish this coming week to convincingly set our weekly higher lows. And again, it cannot hurt to have the USMJ space go bullish as well. We're looking, they consolidated on Thursday and Friday as well, like a lot of those mushroom plays did, and the best case scenario would be a daily bull flag and continuation to all-time highs in the USMJ space, because in my opinion, that shows us confidence in the sectors, and it's a good thing in my opinion. I don't think it's the kind of scenario where we look at it and say, we want the USMJ sector to pull back so profits go from USMJ to the mushroom sector. Essentially, I view them as brothers, and if one's doing well, the other is likely to benefit from it. So best case for the mushroom space would want to see continuation of strength in the US marijuana space. So we'll continue to check in on things. Again, break the lows of these daily support, and the slow fade after the big pump will just continue, and that's the last thing we want to see. And as far as how these pumps and pullbacks are taking place, I mean, you look at this chart and the amount of pullback that we've seen, and it's just a micro version of Bitcoin as far as the different time frames. But if we look at the weekly chart, back in 2017, you know, we hit the high and we ended up pulling back very significantly, but fairly similar in that regard. And that's why it's similar as far as the shape of things, is because of human emotion and going from euphoria to fear. And essentially right now, if we were going to compare, we would say the daily chart of these mushroom plays looks like the weekly chart of Bitcoin, where we had the massive blow off top, a very significant pullback, and then we started building this base, trying to establish support and change the trends. In the end, the bulls could not do so in Bitcoin. That doesn't mean the mushroom sector can't do it. We have to see the opposite. We have to see this big pullback, this building of a base of support, and then the bull break, which is what the bulls are hoping this would be. Next 2 weeks is going to be pretty important as far as whether our bulls are able to maintain higher lows or just be a pump and then just a slow fade, giving back 50, 60, 70% of those pumps. Need to set these higher lows soon. Have a good rest of your day. We'll check in soon. Do good things.